While I was being interviewed by Don Harron last year on CBC, he complimented Newfoundland on the wealth of folklore humour we had added to the culture of Canada. He remarked that he was not turned on by Newfie jokes, you see, and I agreed with him. But I said, I have some anti-Newfie jokes. Oh, he said, you have? Tell us some. Now, I have a distributor in Toronto, Canon Books. They're great fellows. I went back after about 3 months. I said, look, you haven't sold Eaton's, you haven't sold H.B. Smith, the Bay, and many of the big companies. I said, no. Well, I said, I'm going down and do it for you. Oh, gosh, he said, you go down. He said, you can do it better than we can. So very well, off I went, and I did. But I started, just for fun, went into Eaton Centre to talk with the chief sales lady there, you know, and she was a lovely lady, Sonia Vallant. And Sonia talked to me for a little while, and then I pulled out the book, and she looked it around, then turned it over. Oh, she said, you're the author of this book. I said, yes. And she read for a few seconds and then just broke down in laughter. I said, what are you laughing at? She said, just a little thing you have here, a line from an obituary in a Newfoundland newspaper. 2 sons living and 1 in Toronto. And she was a Torontonian, believe it or not. But she liked that very much. You know, when we went into Confederation, real smart antique dealers came to Newfoundland. They did a real clean out, gave people very little for the antiques they found around the island, you see. And this chap thought he'd be smart. He got out of his car and went down to the barn and looked it all over and then went to the door. Nobody had seen him up to this point. And along came then he went in and talked to the owner, and he said, all right, boy, let's go out in the barn and see what's there. Now, while the man was out in the barn, he saw this beautiful oak table. It was all musty looking and everything, but he said, I'll get about $300 for that now. See? So when they came to the table, the fellow said, no table there. He said, I'd not be interested in that. And the antique dealer said, doesn't look very good, does it? Give you $10 for it. He says, you know, it might end up as kindling wood, you know. So he gave him the $10, I'll pick it up tomorrow. When they came back tomorrow, they walked towards the barn, and when they got in the doorway, the owner said, there he is, boy. Thought he'd be heavy in one piece. He said, I made him into 3 nice bundles. A visitor went into a restaurant on Ducker Street, you see, and the girl came over with the menu, and she put it in front of him, and he looked down, and he couldn't see what he wanted, and he looked up at her, and he said, pardon me, do you have frog's legs? No, sir, she said, that's me oils makes me walk that way. The Anglican primate, Bishop Scott, was here at St. Thomas's in Newfoundland. I loved him because I wasn't present now, but he told a story that I liked him very much for because he was laughing at himself, being a mainlander. And he said this, that in Toronto, there's quite a tough district, you see, and they had a bar and there's tough things going on there, and they couldn't find a bouncer heavy enough to handle the situation, you see. And they got a gorilla and trained them to pick up the rowdies and put them outside, and they chain them up in the corner again, see. Newfoundlander went in one night and a racket started, about 5 corpses in 5 minutes, you see. And they let the gorilla go, and the gorilla and Newfoundlander went out through the door struggling. 2 minutes. In came the Newfoundlander, closed the door, and he said, that's the trouble with them mainlanders. He said, you put a fur coat on them, they think they own the world. Again, when I was talking with Don Harron, he said, Al, the Irish community in Newfoundland must be added to your culture terrifically. I said, Don, if you took the Irish out of Newfoundland, you'd have to call our island by another name. And I said, there's a couple of stories which I'd like to tell. He said, go ahead. But I could only tell one, but I have 3 or 4 here for you people. And this man used to go on a tear, you see, go on a bet every now and then. He'd have a job coming off of it. And this time he was 3 months. He couldn't get off of it at all. And he was sitting out behind the house one morning, and the sun was shining, and he was blinking, and he knew there was somebody sitting by him, and he said, "Is that the sun or the moon?" And the other fellow says, "I don't know, but he says, I don't belong around here." The alcoholic had been warned by his doctor that he was going to go deaf if he didn't stop the drinking. So the fellow ignored it. He kept on drinking, and the doctor used to get annoyed. And one day, after announcing to him about 6 months ago that he was going to go deaf, you see, and he said, "Look, what's wrong with you? Can't you give it up?" "Well, I'll tell you the way it is, Doc." He says, "I likes what I drinks more than what I hears." A few months ago, I was billeted in Cornerbrook with Monsignor Marsh. I was out there for the Bible Society, and I enjoyed myself very much. Real good host and a man of God. But Monsignor Murphy came in the next night, and he was from Ireland 15 years ago, you see. And we talked about the Southern Shore, and I said, "Here's one story." I said, "You didn't hear, I guess, when you were up there." Years ago, the mail often was late coming, maybe twice a week or 3 times a week. And a chap in Fairland went into the store and he says, "I wants the newspaper. Do you want yesterday's or today's?" "I wants today's." "Well, you'll have to wait till tomorrow." I was speaking to the Kinsman Club there about 2 years ago in November up in Renews. And a fellow came along to me after, he says, "Mr. Clousten," he said, "a fellow up the shore here had a horse, and the horse was sick," he said. And he met his friend, and his friend said, "You got a sick horse?" "Yes," he said, "I have." "What's the matter with it?" "So I had a horse like that one time." He said, "What'd you do for him?" He said, "I gave him a bottle of turpentine," he said. "You did?" "Yes," he said, "I did." So he went home and he met his friend later. He said, "How'd you get on with the horse?" He said, "Did you give him the turpentine?" "Yes," he said, "I did." "What happened?" He said, "Me horse died." "Yes, boy, that's what happened to my horse too." You couldn't have anything more Irish than that, could you? In many stories, if you leave out the vernacular, the humor disappears. I was down to Heart's Content Festival, and a man came up to me after. He says, "Uncle Al," he said, "a fellow went down to Highland called by arse." And he died in Cardnome, he said, and he perished 2 days later. He went back to the fella he died from. He says, "You know that arse I died from you?" "Yes, boys, I do," he said. I said, "Well, she perished 2 days later." "Get on, didn't you?" "You did, boy," I said. "I'll tell you something else about that arse." "What's that?" He said, "That's the first time she did that." when Joey was in his heyday, he was going around visiting a lot of places, you see. And this time he got off the boat 9 o'clock in the morning, and the local liberal nabob was there on the wharf, 100 people lined up, and he was meeting him. And he came across this fine-looking fellow, you know, and he says, "Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Smallwood." He says, "How are you? Fine, sir?" He says, "How's your wife?" "Dead, sir. Died the winter, sir. And here's how she died." Of course, Joe wasn't interested in how she died, and he went on, you see. So, Joe had asked him what his name was. He says, "John Inry, sir. John Inry." So Joey came back on the wharf during about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and saw 4 or 5 fellows there, and he talked to them, but he didn't recognize John Inry. He said, and he went over to him, "How are you today?" "Fine, sir." "How's your wife?" "Still dead, sir." Iron Cove fellows, 2 of them had a contract to build a house in St. John's, you see, and they ran short of 4x2s, 2x4s. And they had the clerk had an argument with him, you see, and the Ireland Coal fellow was saying 4x2s, you see, and the clerk was saying 2x4s, and they had all right. The clerk says, "How long do you want them?" So he went out to the car and came back. He says, "Me buddy says he wants them for a long while. He's going to build a house." I went to Bonavista some time ago, I should say about 3 years ago, and the chap came in, and he was half full. They said he didn't talk very much unless he was half full. I said, "He's doing all right now." So he said that the priest 30 years ago had to go to St. John's, and he left a young fellow in charge of the houses, and, you know, and all the church belongings. And the second day or third day, the chap wandered into the basement of the rectory, and he saw about 20 cases of empties, you see. And the next day he started going through them. And this priest heard a noise downstairs, surprised him, and came back. And he said, "Pat, what are you doing there?" "Oh, Father," he said. "Oh, Father, I was thirsty." And he said, "I thought there might be one bottle there without the cap off." "You needn't worry about it." He said, "They're all dead men in them cases." "Yes, Father, and I don't think you need to worry either, because I'm sure they all saw the priest before they died." A chap that knew a friend that had died went up to the funeral parlours to sympathize with the family, you see. And when he went in, he went over and looked down at the corpse and burst out laughing. Everybody's just looked around, you see, and talked to the relatives. And before he left, 20 minutes later, he went over, looked down again, and burst out laughing. And the man went along, he says, "Don't do that at these funeral parlours." "Oh, gosh, that fellow there, he's in the coffin." So I knew him all my life, he said. He said he didn't believe in heaven or hell, and here he is all dressed up, no place to go. I don't know if you knew Arch Parsons. This is one on the bishop now. I don't know if you knew Arch Parsons. Arch was a school teacher, became a superintendent of education. And he told me one time down in White Bay, Bishop White was there, and the resident minister took him into this woman's house, you see. And she didn't have anything baked, but she put on a white tablecloth and cut some bread, and then they sat down, she poured them tea. She went into the cupboard and brought out a crock of jam. And she went over to the Bishop White. She says, "My lord," he says, "is you going to have it on the plate, or is you going to smear it on your loaf?" Somebody said, have you got a story on the Anglican minister? I said, yes, and I don't know which one it is, though. This fellow was ordained, young fellow, and went home to spend a holiday with his people, you see, before he take up his charge. And he got home there, and the resident minister thought he should give the sermon on Sunday morning. Well, it was a very old church. But he didn't think he'd do it. But his mother got after him. You know how persuasive mothers are. And he did it. He said, all right, I will. So he got into church, and church hadn't been looked after at all, you see. And time came for the sermon. The resident minister, no need to introduce this gentleman. He's going to give the sermon. And the young fellow got up very nervously, and he said, behold, I come. Dead silence, and he embarrassed and moved around a bit, and then he announced again, behold, I come. Still nothing will come. And you know, he grabbed the old pulpit, and as he said his sermon again, he breathed down on it, behold, I come. And the pulpit gave out, and he went out into the congregation, you see, and he landed in the arms of the resident minister's wife, you see. And he got up, he said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. My dear man, she said, don't worry one thing about it. You warned me 3 times. I went to the church down in Port aux Basques, and the Anglican church. And a woman came along and told us about down in Burgeo a couple of months before that. And she said there was 8 or 10 fellows on the wharf, older men, and they were waiting for a man who was coming home who had been away 48 years. And one of the men on the wharf was his brother, you see. And some fellow went over, he says, Uncle Josiah, he says, is you going to know your brother when he comes on the wharf? No, sir, no. He said, wouldn't know he, no, wouldn't know, sir. 35 years away? No, he said, wouldn't know, no. Is your brother going to know you? Oh, yes, he's better going to know why. He said, I've been here all the time, I've been no place. A Newfoundlander and a Quebecer in Toronto, a fellow was up for a job, you see. And the Torontonian went in, they asked him the questions, they said, oh yes, you passed, but you got to fill in the last word in this line. And there's this. Old MacDonald had a house. Oh my gosh, you can't have a job, you don't know that easy question. Out. Then went in the Quebecer, you see, and asked him all the questions. Yes, you passed. Now fill in the last word in this line. He said, old MacDonald had an estate. Oh, out. I don't want you either. He said, Newfoundlander went in, he said, questions, and they said, yes, you'll pass. But he said, you've got to fill in the last word in this line. Old MacDonald had a farm. Right down, he said, spell it. E-I-E-I-O. This story is what I call the penguin story. A Torontonian was on the highway in Ontario, and he had a big truck, and he had 150 penguins, taking them to the zoo. And the truck broke down, and the Newfoundlander came along and stopped, and he said, what's the matter with you, old cock? He said, truck is broke down, he said, and I got 150 penguins there, taking them to the zoo. Newfoundlander looked at his 2 trucks, mine's as big as yours. He said, I'll take them. He said, will you? So they transferred the penguins, and Torontonian took a roll of bills out. He said, here's the $200. He said, take these penguins to the zoo. Fine. He said, 10 o'clock at night, Trantoni's looking out through the window. Here's a Newfoundlander coming up Young Street with 150 penguins following him. So he went down, he says, I gave you, he said, $200 to take these penguins to the zoo. Yes, but he said, I took them to the zoo and I liked that. He said, and I had some change left over. Now I'm taking them to the movies. You've been just a great audience, and thank you very much indeed.